Well, hey, welcome to New Hope Alliance Nation, and I'm excited about today's interview. We have Jeri on, and we just wanted to bring her on. Jeri serves on our board of directors here at New Hope Alliance, and she's got a great story, her story to tell, and so we're going to dig right in. First off, Jeri, introduce yourself, but glad to have you.
Jeri Biarco, and known Rick quite some time. Our families are close friends, and gratefully got into some Celebrate Recovery, and now New Hope Alliance with Rick and the rest of the crew.
Right. What do you do for full-time work?
I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I do a couple different types of contract jobs, but direct primary care, some wound care, really anything in medicine.
Okay. All right. Awesome. We'll dig into it a little bit. First off, Jeri, you have a background in recovery. So I'm going to give you the floor. Let's hear your story. People need to hear this.
Okay. All right. So my drug of choice was alcohol, and I grew up in an alcoholic family, whole family, just generations, my mom and dad as well. And when I was raising my kids when they were young, 3 and 6, just dawned on me that I didn't want kids to grow up the way that I grew up, just unsure, not trusting. Lots of different aspects come into that, low self confidence. And I had really just started drinking more and more. And I was, the productive, the functional alcoholic. I was in getting my master's degree as a nurse practitioner, working full time as a nurse. Had the 2 kiddos, a husband that traveled all the time. So kept everything looking beautiful from the outside. Everything looked perfect from the outside going in. But over time, more and more, the just guilt on the inside is what led me to getting help. I could have done everything else just fine, but it was just that guilt, and there was just something inside eating me alive. That and my daughter, when she's 3, when we were at a carnival, I went to get another beer, and this little eyes look up at me, and she's like, "You could always just get water." Like,
Coming from a 3-year-old.
what a thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming from a 3-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, out of the mouth of babes, right? And that started catching my attention, those things.
Right. So what made you realize, hey, I have a problem and I need some help?
I have to say, if I'm honest, I've always knew that I drank different than other people. There's, people can go out and have 1 or 2 cocktails and be done, and that's foreign to me. If I have one, then I have, you know, whatever's left, or until I pass out, which one comes first. And then, putting everything together on the outside, making the picture look perfect, that was just part of covering up really just the mess and chaos that I felt inside. But in my family too, when you grow up that way, you don't know that it's not normal per se. I didn't know people could go to the lake without a cooler of beer. I didn't know that people had baby showers without a spiked punch. And so when you grow up in an environment where it's acceptable, you really don't until you get older or it starts affecting you more, I guess. You didn't know there was a difference. But when it came to going out with friends, or as I got into my early 20s, is when I really started noticing, wow, I do drink different than a lot of people because there's no switch.
I mean, it's either on or
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's my personality. It's all or nothing. And I'm in. If I'm in, I'm in, and if I'm out, I'm and
Right.
so it's done a lot of good for me in certain ways, but there's also that the negative component that you have to watch out for.
Right. So the gambling tables in Vegas, yeah, they love you.
That's one thing that I don't want to let go of my money.
Right.
But there's several other things that are just the same.
It's funny because I'm not a gambler either, but to let go of our money, right? It's easy to spend money on. Drug of choice was pornography. So but we'd spend money on those things, right?
Yeah, didn't think
Right.
anything of it. Yeah, spending 20, 40, $50 on some beer, but throwing a $20 bill in, you know, a machine, I just knew it was going to waste.
Got it.
Wasn't getting anything out of it.
Right. So how did you start that process? I mean, so you knew you needed help. Where did you turn first? I mean, did it take somebody to tell you, hey, Jerry, you're drinking way too much?
Yes, and the funny thing is, probably I would say a year or two up to that point. So I got help right around my 37th birthday. And it was a few years up to that point that inside there was just this hope and longing for someone in my family to say, what are you doing? We got to make some changes. You know that yourself, but you do for me, I was waiting for somebody to acknowledge it and see that. But it didn't come from a family member because we were all one and the same, right? And if they called me out,
And
that
they're
would
calling themselves out too.
exactly,
That makes sense.
exactly. So it was a really good friend at the time and coworker. She had went out of vacation. My husband and I went on vacation with her and her husband. We'd known each other for years, and she had no idea. The people I worked at a hospital for 17 years. Nobody had any idea. But we went on vacation, and that was when she first saw that. Wow, when Jerry drinks, she drinks. Unfortunately, at dinner, I wasn't really sitting up, wasn't coherent, wasn't with it, and then wake up the next day and I'm ready to go to breakfast and get a Bloody Mary. We're on vacation. Let's go, and she's like, you're 110 pounds. How are you first standing, and ready to go again. And so we got home from that, and it was probably a couple months after that I think I had called into work one time. It did get a little easier to call into work, especially when I was in school. That I don't know if that felt like it gave me permission. I'm working hard. I'm in school. I'm working, but it became a little easier. And so she finally called me one day, and she really laid it on the line. And I'll get emotional, I'm sure, because forever be grateful to her that she took that chance. And she just said, you're doing to your kids what you've talked about how you grew up, and your kids are going to say the same things
Yeah.
about you. And you bring my kid. Doesn't take much when you bring your kids into it, right?
Right. That's a throat punch that nobody wants to hear,
Right.
but sometimes that's what it takes
Yeah,
for us.
absolutely.
Yeah, for us to come to that realization that hey, look, obviously it's affecting people around me. For the longest time, I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I was acting out and doing my things, I'm like, oh, that's not hurting anybody.
Right. Right. Oh yeah. The kids are in bed. They get their baths. They're eating dinner. I'm doing I'm going to school. I'm working, taking care of the house. Yeah. What? There was nothing was I didn't get a DUI. I didn't go to jail. I didn't lose a job, all of those things. And I used that in my mind as justification that, I was that functioning alcoholic and it was okay.
Right. Did you ever, get to that point where you had to go through, some kind of detox program or, how did you get into recovery?
After that friend had let me know that it was the next morning, I was actually, and it was my 37th birthday. Yeah, walked into a local a meeting house by myself, scared to death, having no idea what I was doing. And I just walked in and hungover, of course, right? Just an emotional mess. And I just went straight up to the table, which is not my personality at all. I kind of like to hang in the back, especially if I'm not drinking. I thought to myself, if I'm gonna do this, I need to be all in. And so I just sat right at the table. I spoke the first time, and hearing everyone else's story. And the biggest thing is just knowing that you, you're not alone, and it's not something you've done wrong, or not that you're not good enough, but that everybody, I mean, doctors, lawyers, uh, you know, um, anybody, it doesn't discriminate for sure. And it was just nice to see all types of all walks of life in the same room. And I have to say that was probably the first time I felt comfortable and full of people in the longest time, if not ever.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, I felt like I was at home. People understood me.
Yeah. There's days you don't wanna leave. I remember there being days there as the meeting would be ending, and I would be thinking, "Don't I don't wanna walk outside. I don't wanna go face that world," you know? I feel good in here. So I did that every day, 5 days a week for the first year, but after that first time, I made it to 30 days and, you know, thought, "See, I did it for 30 days, it's fine," and there was a fall festival, and so some family came over and I drank because, I could control it for those 30 days, so, I must be fine, and that went on for a couple more weeks, and then it was November 9th of 2007 that, 17, 2017. Yes, I was 37. I went back in and had to tell all of my people that I'm here for a 24-hour shift to start this routine over again. But there's just something about being loyal to them and myself.
Mhm. Was it hard? I mean, obviously to go back and get that chip.
Very hard,
Yeah.
very hard. Not hard enough that it kept me away. I knew I wanted it. When you're in a room with people who have been successful and you see them smiling and thriving and they've got light in their eyes and, they can tell you where they've been and where they came from and where they are now. You want what they had.
Right.
I think that's a pretty common saying too that we hear a lot in
It's amazing because, they probably had handfuls of day ones,
right.
because it's not like, most people have that where they have that relapse moment and they've got to go back, start all over again. And it's all about getting back up, right? But, there's very few people that I know that have just, walked away from something and just been able to stop.
I felt blessed that I had 2 24-hour shifts, because some people have more and that's okay too. Like you said, they come back. But I felt like it was harder to come back the second time. It was harder to stop. It was harder to acknowledge it. And then even from people that have done it longer or went back out or relapsed, I do hear that each time you go back out, it's a little harder. And that makes sense because the addiction process is just farther along, right?
Right. Right. I just love the fact though that, you getting that chip, or you probably thought, man, everybody's looking at me and they're judging me. And I guarantee they won't. They weren't, right?
That-
And that's the cool thing is that, in the doors of recovery, everybody's been there. So,
Mhm.
they may call you out on your BS, right?
It's
Which is great.
leaving
Yeah, absolutely. But they're not judging you when you do screw up. They're there to help walk that journey with you.
with open arms every time. It was it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I've found that, even through, the recovery, obviously Celebrate Recovery is a big part of my life, right? And I did some Al-Anon and I've attended meetings with friends, AA meetings and stuff like that. And I find that it's the same thing in every group, Christ-centered or not, right? People are still walking the journey with you, different ways. I mean, obviously, small groups and stuff is important to Celebrate Recovery for us, but being known, finding accountability. Where did you find accountability?
As far as myself, um, that one friend called that out, right? And then I guess it was my kids. It was I want to be there for them. I don't want to miss out on things. I want to be present. I don't want to be at a soccer practice, with a beer in my sippy cup or waiting to get home to have that beer or a couple before I go. These kids grow up so fast. People say it all the time, don't blink. They grow up so fast. And I'm seeing that and I just want this that. And I want them to believe me, trust me, know that when I, let them know I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah. So your kids knew.
They were young, 3 and 6 when I
Okay.
started. 3 and 6 when I started, 4 and 7 when we finished, and, my oldest, the one who wanted me to get water, she's an old soul, and she knew what was going on. I don't I don't think that she understood the whole process, but I do see things even now, unfortunately, that definitely stemmed from that. I think she had a hard time going to sleep, and I think, she knew that mom's demeanor was different. She didn't feel safe in her tummy when she went to bed. She's wanted to know how her brother was, and then there my ex-husband drinks as well, so it's like, I think she had a lot of issues just feeling safe at bedtime for a
Right.
while.
Did they know your whole story now? Have you opened up to them about that?
They do. Yeah, they do. My son doesn't really remember much at all. They do, and they can appreciate that, and my daughter just doesn't understand it. You know, she doesn't even like to be around alcohol or anything. She sees how it changes people's demeanors and
Hmm.
decisions, and thankfully and hopefully that sticks.
Right.
But she doesn't.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll leave names out because I know your daughter, but
Yeah,
uh, it's they're smart. Kids are smarter than we were at that age. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but it's true. They've seen what we've done, right? I'm a big firm believer in family curses as well when it comes down to
mhm,
it. Things that we just haven't processed and gotten through. I really believe that we pass that on as a generational curse to our family. If it doesn't stop with us, right,
yeah,
it will carry on to our kids. And that's something that we need to be, aware of and you know, be in prayer over, because that's important. I don't want my kids to go through, half the stuff that my wife had to go through. And, she hasn't shared her story on here yet, but she will. But it's a big time alcohol issue. And I'm sure you're probably feeling the same thing. You don't want your kids to ever even have to go through.
right, right. I remember I was 8 years old. I think the first time I came to my dad when I was drinking. Home from school from second grade, I remember turning the corner and seeing his truck, and you'd get nervous, has he been drinking? If he hasn't, is he going to? And then if he's not home, did he stop at the pub? Is he going to, just all of these uncertainties. And it really is kind of sets the precedence for that, just walking on eggshells and just getting a sense for a feeling in a room for safety right away. That's just ingrained in our brains. So yeah, and that was 8 years old. So yeah, I'm sure it goes younger even.
Hmm. And I see adults today that, that same kind of story, right? Um, of them growing up and now they're in recovery for it, trying
Yeah.
to deal with that person, that past hurt, habit, or hang up that they're struggling with.
Oh, sure.
Uh, you know, it's it's uh, it's sad. It definitely is sad, and that's definitely something I don't want my kids to ever have to experience.
Right.
I don't want them to be in recovery because of me.
Right. And there's so many, I won't get too much like into the medical side, but there's so many aspects to it, just how it wires our brain from such a young age and the generational effects, like you were saying, it really creates who we are
Yeah,
when we become adults. It creates our nature, our character, the anxiety or depression or the jokester because they don't want anyone to know that they're hurting.
hmm,
I mean, it can go any which way,
yeah.
but
So they wear a mask, right? They put that mask on.
exactly.
I wore a mask for a long time. I don't anymore. My story is open for anybody, and I have accountability because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, we can talk the medical side. That is definitely your heart, right?
Yeah.
Being a
Yeah,
family nurse
absolutely.
practitioner. And so tell me your heart behind wanting to get involved with New Hope Alliance.
I I've always wanted to be in medicine, so helping people is just my personality, and I think after going through recovery myself, dealing with it, different aspects growing up and then going through it myself, um, I really found that talking to people after I went through recovery was a lot more effective than before in my mind. When we can empathize with someone and know exactly what they're feeling and exactly what they're going through. I think it gives the newcomer some hope and they can feel that familiarity. They can sense that, right? Rather than the medical provider, you need to stop and you need to do this, and that's not good for you. Uh, I never told everybody my story, but I always spoke with a plural pronoun and put myself in it with them because I was there and still am, right? I always will be.
Right. Right. Yeah. I always carry the recovery, story when I deal with people. I'm not in a position like you are where, you have to keep things confidential and everything else. But obviously I keep people's stories confidential, but being able to share that without sharing it, I think is awesome.
Right, right.
You know,
And
living it out.
right. I felt like that was maybe no, I don't sponsor an AA, but that's my give back is to spot, because a lot of us don't want to tell anybody. We want to keep it a secret. You might go to the doctor a lot for headaches or stomach aches, and you can see that repetitive pattern, what and that it doesn't discriminate, addiction doesn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter what your profession is or how you grew up, right? If you've got it in you, then it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's awesome that you said yes, number one, when I came to you and asked you to be a part of what we're doing. Uh, when we started praying about, hey, who are we going to have on this podcast with us? Immediately you came to mind. We can't, uh, we can't be more excited than having you that God's put together for us. I'm just excited to see where we go. We're about ready to wrap this up, but is there anything that you could say to the listener out there, something that resonated with you that you want to pass on to somebody?
Yeah, I think if you're out there and you're wondering, am I an alcoholic or am I an addict or do I use it socially? If you're even asking yourself that question, then you're an alcoholic or addict, right? Um, People that can have one or two drinks and be done or only drink once or twice a year, they don't ask themselves every night, do I am
Hmm.
an addict? So I would say that. And then the other thing I want to say is that it's possible, and there's a lot of good people in it, right? I do feel like that recovery family, it's almost like you get a second chance at life, and you just want to live it genuine and full. And it's just a good people. Right?
Right. Right. Well, you're going to hear a lot more of Jerry's story, as time goes on. She's going to be a part of these podcasts that we're doing, and I'm excited to, have her back at the seat. Thanks, Jerry, for coming on and the second podcast that we've done. So we're super excited here and get to get this ball rolling and getting these out there for people to hear. If Jerry's story resonated with you, please reach out to somebody. You can hit us up on social media with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. This podcast, that's where you're seeing it. It is YouTube right now. We're going to be on Spotify soon. Come in. You can also reach us at hope@newhopealliance.org and email it to us, answer questions that way, or you can help get you connected somewhere. But Jerry, thanks again for coming on. Definitely appreciate your time and everything you're doing with the Hope Alliance. And all I can say is welcome to the nation.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I feel honored to be a part of the correct.
All right. See you soon.
Sounds good.